The vast Imperial warship cut through space like an obsidian blade, its scaled hull gleaming under the light of distant stars. Inside the command chamber, Lord Vaxer, first dragon of the Drakari Empire, stood with his massive clawed hands clasped behind his back. His amber eyes, with vertical pupils that narrowed to slits, scanned the holographic displays floating before him. The ancient dragon's scales shimmered with iridescent blacks and deep purples as he turned to address the council gathered around the circular table. "The search has gone on too long," Vaxer rumbled, his voice deep and resonant. 17 planetary systems, and still no suitable heir has been found. The flame of succession grows weaker. If we do not find one who can bear it soon, our entire civilization faces extinction. The 5 other dragons in the chamber shifted uncomfortably. Each represented one of the great houses of the Drakari, a species that had dominated their galactic arm for millennia. They were not accustomed to failure, especially not one with such dire consequences. Lady Seraphina, her scales of brilliant azure that seemed to capture and amplify the light in the room, leaned forward. "Perhaps we should consider widening our search parameters. The ancient texts speak of compatibility beyond our kind." "Blasphemy," hissed Lord Draken, the oldest among them. His scales had faded to a dull gray, but his eyes burned with the same intensity they had for centuries. "The flame can only be carried by those worthy of our lineage." "And yet here we are," Vaxer replied, silencing the elder with a glance. 17 systems, hundreds of worlds, thousands of potential heirs from our most noble bloodlines, and not one capable of bearing the flame without being consumed by it. He turned to the ship's navigator, a smaller dragon with bronze scales. "Where does the flame pull us next?" The navigator hesitated before answering. "A small system at the edge of the Orion Spur, unremarkable, save for one anomaly. The third planet shows signs of developing civilization. The inhabitants call it Earth." A dismissive snort came from Lord Draken. "Primitives. What could they possibly offer?" Vaxer's eyes narrowed as he studied the holographic representation of the blue-green world now rotating before them. "The flame guides us for a reason. Set course for this Earth. We have nothing to lose by investigating." As the Imperial warship altered its trajectory, none of the dragons could have anticipated what awaited them on that distant world, or how it would forever change the fate of their ancient empire. On Earth, in the small town of Pinewood nestled against the mountains, 11-year-old Eli Morgan sat on the roof of his foster home, staring up at the stars. The night was clear and cold, his breath forming small clouds that dissipated into the darkness. Behind him, the sounds of arguing filtered through the attic window. His foster parents were fighting again, probably about money, or maybe about him. It didn't really matter. Eli had learned long ago to tune it out. He pulled his worn jacket tighter around his thin frame and focused on the constellations above. Astronomy was his escape, a way to imagine something beyond this place, beyond the endless cycle of new homes and disappointed faces. In his 12 years of life, he'd lived in 7 different foster homes. This one, like all the others, was temporary. "I'll get out someday," he whispered to the stars. "I'll find somewhere I actually belong." A shooting star streaked across the sky, brilliant and blue. Eli watched it with wide eyes, making a silent wish as he always did. But this star was different. It didn't fade. Instead, it seemed to grow larger, brighter. Eli squinted, confused. That wasn't a shooting star at all. Miles above the Earth's surface, the Drakari ship entered the atmosphere, its advanced cloaking systems activated to avoid detection by human technology. Inside, Lord Vaxer stood in the observation chamber, watching as the planet's surface came into view. "The flame pulls strongly here," Lady Seraphina noted, joining him by the viewport. In her clawed hand, she held a crystalline container. Inside, a blue-white flame danced and pulsed, casting eerie shadows across her scales. "Stronger than I've ever felt it." Vaxer nodded, his expression grave. "Deploy the Seekers. If there is a compatible vessel on this world, we must find it quickly." The flame weakens with each passing cycle. Throughout the ship, small drones detached from their docking stations and shot toward the planet below. Each was equipped with sensors specifically calibrated to detect the unique resonance that would indicate compatibility with the flame of succession. They scattered across the globe, invisible to human eyes, searching. In Pinewood, Eli finally tore his eyes away from the strange light in the sky. It had disappeared behind the mountains, but something felt different. The air seemed charged, like before a thunderstorm, and there was a peculiar humming sound just at the edge of his hearing. He shook his head, trying to clear it. That's when he noticed the small sphere hovering just a few feet away. It was about the size of a baseball, metallic and smooth, with a faint blue glow emanating from what looked like an eye in its center. Eli froze, unsure whether to be frightened or fascinated. The sphere moved closer, the blue light intensifying as it scanned him. Eli felt a strange warmth spread through his chest, almost like recognition. The sphere circled him once, twice, then shot upward with incredible speed, disappearing into the night sky. "Hey," Eli called out, suddenly not wanting it to leave. "Wait." But it was gone, leaving him alone on the rooftop, wondering if he'd imagined the whole thing. On the Drakari ship, alarms blared. The council members gathered quickly as data streamed in from the returning seeker drone. "Impossible," Lord Draken muttered, staring at the holographic display showing a small human boy. "A primitive child? This must be a malfunction." Vaxer studied the readings carefully. "No malfunction. The resonance is the strongest we've ever recorded. The flame responds to this child." Lady Seraphina moved closer to the hologram, examining the boy's features with intense curiosity. "He appears unremarkable for his species. Small even. Yet the readings are clear. We cannot entrust the future of our empire to a creature that won't live beyond a century," Draken protested. "Even if he could bear the flame, which I doubt. What good is an heir who will die before he can properly rule?" Vaxer raised a clawed hand for silence. "The ancient texts speak of transformation. If the flame accepts him, he will become more than what he is now." He turned to the ship's commander. "Prepare a retrieval team. We must bring this human to the ship for testing." "And if he fails?" asked another council member. Vaxer's expression hardened. "Then we continue our search. But I sense the flame has led us here for a reason." He glanced at the crystalline container, where the blue-white flame now burned brighter than it had in centuries. "Something about this child is different." Eli couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the strange glowing sphere. Eventually, he gave up and returned to the roof, hoping it might come back. The night had grown colder, but he barely noticed. His mind was too full of questions. He didn't have to wait long. A soft humming filled the air, and Eli looked up to see not one sphere this time, but three, descending from the clouds. They surrounded him, blue lights pulsing in unison. "Hello," Eli whispered, heart racing but curiosity overcoming fear. "What are you?" Instead of answering, the spheres projected a beam of light that enveloped him. Eli felt his feet leave the roof, his body becoming weightless. He should have been terrified, but instead, a strange calm washed over him. As he floated upward, pinewood growing smaller below him, Eli realized with perfect clarity that his wish had been granted. He was leaving, not just this foster home, but Earth itself. The journey through the atmosphere was a blur of light and sensation. When Eli's vision cleared, he found himself in a vast chamber unlike anything he'd ever seen. The walls were made of some material that seemed to shift and move, like scales catching the light. The ceiling arched high above, decorated with what looked like star charts, but showing constellations he didn't recognize. And there, watching him with gleaming amber eyes, stood Lord Vaxer. Eli's mouth fell open. The creature before him was at least 8 feet tall, with a powerful, vaguely reptilian body covered in iridescent black scales. Its face was elongated, almost like a dragon from storybooks, but with an intelligence that was unmistakably sentient. It wore what appeared to be armor, made of a material that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. "Welcome, young human," Vaxer said, his mouth moving in ways that shouldn't have been able to form human words. Yet Eli understood him perfectly. "I am Lord Vaxer, first dragon of the Drakari Empire." Eli swallowed hard, finding his voice. "I'm Eli Morgan. Are you real?" A sound like distant thunder rumbled from Vaxer's chest. Laughter, Eli realized with surprise. "Very real, Eli Morgan. As real as you are." Vaxer moved closer, studying the boy with open curiosity. "Do you know why you are here?" Eli shook his head, suddenly aware of other figures entering the chamber, more dragon-like beings, each with scales of different colors and patterns. You possess something rare, Vaxer continued. A compatibility with our most sacred treasure, the flame of succession. For generations, it has been passed from ruler to ruler, connecting them to the very essence of our civilization. But now, it needs a new bearer, an heir who can carry it forward. And you think that's me? Eli asked, disbelief evident in his voice. But I'm just a kid. A human kid. Lady Seraphina stepped forward, the crystalline container in her hands. Inside, the blue-white flame danced more vigorously than before, almost as if responding to Eli's presence. The flame has chosen you, she said, her voice melodic despite its alien timbre. We do not yet understand why, but its will is clear. Lord Draken pushed his way to the front, his gray scales dull under the chamber's light. This is absurd. The boy must be tested properly before we jump to conclusions. Vaxer nodded slowly. Yes, the traditional trials must be observed. He looked down at Eli, who suddenly seemed very small among these massive beings. Are you willing, Eli Morgan? The tests are not without risk, but if you succeed, you would become something greater than you can imagine. Eli stared at the flame, feeling its strange pull. He thought about Earth, about the foster home where nobody really wanted him, about the lonely nights staring at stars that now seemed closer than ever. What happens if I fail? He asked quietly. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. Finally, Vaxer answered, his voice solemn. The flame consumes those who are incompatible. It is not a gentle process. You mean it would kill me? Eli stated, surprising the dragons with his directness. Yes, Vaxer admitted. But the preliminary readings suggest your compatibility is exceptionally high. The risk, while real, is less for you than for any candidate we have found. Eli took a deep breath, looking around at the alien faces watching him. He should have been paralyzed with fear, but instead, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years, hope. Whether it was the flame's influence or his own desperate desire to belong somewhere, Eli made his decision. I'll do it, he said firmly. I'll take your tests. The preparation for the trials took 3 Earth days. Eli was given quarters aboard the massive ship, which he learned was called the Dracorath, the Eternal Flame. The room assigned to him was clearly designed for a being much larger than himself, but it had been hastily adapted with furniture closer to his size. During this time, Lady Seraphina took it upon herself to educate Eli about the Dracari Empire. She explained how their civilization had spread across 12 star systems, bringing order and knowledge to countless worlds. The Dracari were long-lived, with lifespans measured in centuries, and possessed technology that seemed like magic to Eli. The flame of succession is our greatest treasure, she told him as they walked through a garden chamber filled with plants from a dozen different worlds. It contains the collective wisdom of all who have carried it before. More than that, it is the source of our connection to the cosmos itself. But why me? Eli asked, the question that had been burning in his mind since his arrival. Why would it choose a human? Seraphina's azure scales shimmered as she tilted her head in thought. The flame sees beyond our understanding. Perhaps it recognizes something in you that we cannot yet perceive. On the morning of the 4th day, Eli was brought to a vast arena deep within the ship. The entire council was present, along with dozens of other Dracari who had come to witness this unprecedented event. Eli stood in the center, feeling very small and very human amid these ancient, powerful beings. Lord Vaxer addressed the assembly, his voice echoing through the chamber. Today, Eli Morgan of Earth faces the 3 trials of succession. Should he succeed, he will be recognized as the flame-bearer, heir to the Dracari throne. He turned to Eli. Are you prepared, young one? Eli nodded, his mouth dry with nervousness but his eyes determined. I'm ready. Then let the first trial commence, Vaxer announced. The trial of mind. A section of the floor slid open, and from it rose a crystalline structure that resembled a chair. Eli approached it cautiously. Sit, instructed Seraphina. The chair will connect with your thoughts. It will search for the quality of wisdom, the ability to see beyond the immediate, to understand consequences that ripple through time. Eli sat in the chair, which adjusted to his size. The moment he leaned back, crystal tendrils extended to touch his temples. Eli gasped as his mind was suddenly flooded with images, scenarios playing out like vivid dreams. He saw a world ravaged by war, its inhabitants desperate for resources. A Drakari fleet orbited above, weapons primed. The simplest solution was conquest, take what was needed by force. But Eli saw beyond that. He saw diplomatic options, technological exchanges that could benefit both species, ways to transform enemies into allies. Scenario after scenario presented itself, each more complex than the last. Eli navigated them instinctively, finding paths that balanced justice with mercy, strength with compassion. Choices that recognized the value of life in all its forms. When the connection finally broke, Eli slumped forward, exhausted. The assembly of Drakari murmured among themselves, clearly surprised. The trial of mind is complete, announced an elder dragon who served as judge. The candidate has demonstrated wisdom beyond his years. He has passed. Lord Draken's eyes narrowed with suspicion. The test must have been simplified for him. It was not, Vaxer replied firmly. He faced the same challenges any Drakari heir would face. And he found solutions even I had not considered. Eli barely had time to recover before Vaxer announced, the second trial will now begin. The trial of heart. This time, a small pedestal rose from the floor. Upon it sat a scaled creature that resembled a cat-sized dragon. It appeared wounded, one wing bent at an unnatural angle, its breathing labored. This is a Krell, explained Seraphina, a lesser draconic species. This one is injured and in pain. The trial of heart measures compassion. A quality is necessary for ruling as strength. Eli approached the small creature carefully. Its scales were a dull red, and it hissed weakly as he came near. He could see the fear in its eyes, a universal language he understood well from his own experiences. Hey, little guy, he said softly, extending his hand slowly. I'm not going to hurt you. The Krell snapped at his fingers, but Eli didn't pull away. He remained still, patient, until the creature's defensive posture relaxed slightly. With gentle movements, he examined the injured wing, finding where it had been dislocated. I think I can help, he murmured, more to himself than to the observers. But it's going to hurt for a second. I'm sorry about that. With careful precision, Eli manipulated the joint, popping the wing back into place. The Krell shrieked and bit Eli's hand hard enough to draw blood, but he didn't flinch or retaliate. Instead, he continued to stroke the creature's head until its breathing calmed. There you go, he whispered. Better now, right? To the astonishment of the watching Drakari, the Krell crawled up Eli's arm and settled on his shoulder, making a sound that resembled purring. The trial of heart is complete, announced the judge. The candidate has demonstrated true compassion, even at personal cost. He has passed. Lord Draken seemed less skeptical now, watching Eli with newfound interest. The boy had surprised them twice already. The final trial awaits, Vaxer declared. The trial of courage. The arena darkened, and the floor beneath Eli began to shift and change. The Krell flew from his shoulder as the ground transformed into what appeared to be a narrow bridge spanning a bottomless chasm. At the far end stood a pedestal with a small blue flame dancing upon it. You must cross the bridge and retrieve a spark of the flame, Vaxer explained. The path will challenge you in ways you cannot anticipate. Remember, courage is not the absence of fear, but the determination to proceed despite it. Eli approached the bridge cautiously. It looked solid enough, though it was narrow, barely wide enough for him to walk normally. He took a deep breath and stepped onto it. Immediately, the bridge began to crumble behind him. Eli broke into a run, heart pounding as pieces fell away mere inches behind his feet. Halfway across, the bridge suddenly shifted, tilting to one side. Eli lost his balance, nearly tumbling into the abyss. He caught himself at the last moment, clinging to the edge with white-knuckled hands. As he pulled himself back up, the air around him filled with whispers, voices speaking of his deepest fears and insecurities. He wasn't wanted. He wasn't worthy. He was doomed to fail, just as he had failed to keep any family that had taken him in. Eli's hands trembled, but he kept moving forward. Not real, he muttered to himself. Keep going. When he was just steps away from the pedestal, a figure materialized before him, a perfect replica of himself, but with eyes that burned with malice. They'll discard you too, his doppelganger said, voice dripping with venom. Once they've used you, that's all you're good for. A temporary solution. A placeholder. Eli hesitated, the words cutting deep because they echoed his own secret fears. But then he straightened his shoulders and looked his double in the eye. Maybe, he admitted, but I'm still going to try. He walked straight through the apparition, which dissipated like smoke. With steady hands, Eli reached for the small flame on the pedestal and cupped it in his palms. It was cool to the touch, dancing above his skin without burning. As he turned to face the assembly, the illusory chasm vanished, revealing the solid floor of the arena once more. The Drakari were silent, watching him with a mixture of awe and disbelief. The trial of courage is complete, the judge announced, voice solemn. The candidate faced his fears without faltering. He has passed all 3 trials. Lord Vaxer stepped forward, his massive form towering over Eli. But for the first time, the boy didn't feel intimidated by the dragon's size. Something had changed during the trials. A confidence had awakened within him. Eli Morgan of Earth, Vaxer said, his voice resonating throughout the chamber. You have proven yourself worthy beyond all expectations. The time has come for you to face the flame itself. Lady Seraphina approached, carrying the crystalline container. The blue-white flame inside now burned brighter than ever, casting dancing shadows across the entire arena. She opened the container, and the flame rose into the air, hovering like a living thing. If the flame accepts you, Vaxer explained, you will be transformed. Your human form will be enhanced, your lifespan extended to match our own. You will become the bridge between our worlds, the heir to an empire that spans the stars. He paused. I serious. But the choice must be yours. Once begun, there is no turning back. Eli looked at the flame, then at the assembled Drakari. He thought about Earth, about the life he was leaving behind. There was no one there who would truly miss him, no place that had ever felt like home. I choose to accept the flame, he said, his young voice steady and clear. Vaxer nodded solemnly. Then approach, Eli Morgan. Embrace your destiny. Eli stepped forward, arms outstretched. The blue-white flame hovered before him for a moment, as if studying him. Then, with a sudden surge, it rushed toward him, engulfing his body in brilliant light. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. Eli fell to his knees, crying out as the flame seemed to burn through his very being, rewriting him on a fundamental level. His skin glowed from within, veins of light spreading across his body like a network of stars. The Drakari watched in tense silence. Many had seen the ritual before, but never with a being so different from themselves. Some, like Lord Draken, expected to see the boy consumed, reduced to ash as incompatible vessels had been in the past. Instead, something remarkable happened. As the pain reached its crescendo, Eli's back arched, and from his shoulder blades emerged what appeared to be wings, not of flesh and scale like the Drakari's, but formed of pure energy, translucent and shimmering with the same blue-white light as the flame. His eyes, when he opened them, had changed as well. The irises now glowed with inner fire, and his pupils had elongated slightly, becoming more reptilian. His skin remained human, but it now had a subtle iridescence when the light caught it just right. The transformation complete, Eli rose to his feet. He felt different, stronger, more aware. Knowledge that wasn't his own filled his mind. Histories of worlds he'd never seen, languages he'd never heard but somehow now understood. Lord Vaxer approached him, dropping to one knee in a gesture of respect that sent shock waves through the assembly. The flame has chosen. Before us stands Eli Morgan, bearer of the eternal flame, heir to the Drakari Empire. One by one, the other dragons knelt, even Lord Draken, though his expression remained guarded. Eli looked around at them, these ancient, powerful beings now bowing to him, a human boy who, just days ago, had been sitting alone on a rooftop, wishing for somewhere to belong. As the energy wings on his back folded against his body, becoming less visible but still present, Eli realized his wish had been granted in a way he could never have imagined. He had found his place in the universe, among the stars. What happens now? He asked Vaxer, his voice steadier and somehow older than before. The first dragon rose, amber eyes meeting Eli's glowing ones. Now, young heir, your true journey begins. There is much for you to learn, and much for us to learn from you. Together, we will forge a new path for the Drakari Empire. Eli nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle upon him. But for the first time in his life, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like purpose. As the assembly dispersed, Lady Seraphina approached him, azure scales gleaming in the chamber's light. "The transformation is only the beginning," she said softly. "The challenges ahead will test even the strength the flame has given you." "What challenges?" Eli asked. Seraphina's expression grew serious. "Not all will accept the human heir, even one transformed by the flame. And there are forces beyond our empire that would see us fall." She glanced at Vaxer, who was deep in conversation with the other council members. "But those are concerns for tomorrow. Tonight, you should rest and allow your new form to stabilize." As Eli was led back to his quarters, now the royal chambers befitting his new status, he caught glimpses of his reflection in the polished surfaces they passed. The face looking back at him was still his own, yet undeniably changed. His eyes glowed with inner fire, and there was a subtle pattern to his skin that hadn't been there before, visible only when the light caught it just right. He wondered what his future held as heir to an alien empire, as a bridge between two species. He wondered if he would ever return to Earth, or if his destiny now lay entirely among the stars. One thing was certain: Eli Morgan had found somewhere he belonged, and that was more than he had ever dared to hope for. Dawn broke on Eli's first official day as heir to the Drakari Empire. The concept of dawn was artificial aboard the Drakarath, a simulation of the day-night cycle the crew maintained despite traveling through the eternal night of space. Eli stood by the viewport in his chambers, watching the stars drift by, testing the new sensations in his transformed body. He extended his arms, focusing on the strange energy that now coursed through him. The wings of blue-white light materialized, stretching from his shoulder blades and filling the room with their ethereal glow. They weren't physical like the leathery wings of the Drakari, but rather manifestations of the flame's power, energy given form by his will. A chime announced a visitor. "Enter," Eli called, allowing the wings to fade. Lady Seraphina glided into the room, her azure scales catching the artificial morning light. "The council awaits you, young heir. Your first official audience." Eli nodded, straightening the formal attire that had been crafted for him overnight. A suit of midnight blue material that seemed to shimmer like the night sky, with patterns reminiscent of constellations woven into the fabric. It had been designed to accommodate his energy wings should he need to manifest them. "Are they still surprised that I survived?" he asked, a hint of challenge in his voice. Seraphina's lips curved in what Eli had come to recognize as a smile. "Some more than others. Lord Draken has been particularly contemplative." As they walked through the corridors of the massive ship, Drakari crew members stopped and bowed as Eli passed. It was disconcerting, these ancient, powerful beings showing such deference to what had been, just days ago, an ordinary human boy. The council chamber fell silent as Eli entered. 6 pairs of reptilian eyes tracked his movement as he took his place at the head of the table, a position that had remained vacant for too long. "Heir Eli," Lord Vaxer began formally. "The council has convened to discuss your official presentation to the Empire. Word of your ascension has already spread throughout our territories. Many are curious. Some are concerned. They doubt me because I'm human," Eli stated plainly. "They doubt what they do not understand," corrected Vaxer. "Which is why a formal tour of the core worlds has been proposed. The people must see their heir, witness the flame's choice with their own eyes." Lord Draken, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. "Before we parade the boy through the Empire, perhaps we should ensure he truly understands what he has inherited." His gray scales seemed duller than before, his age showing more prominently. "The burden of the flame is not merely ceremonial. It connects him to our entire history, our collective consciousness. Has he accessed these memories yet?" All eyes turned to Eli, who shifted uncomfortably. He had felt the presence of the flame's knowledge, like a vast library just beyond his reach, but hadn't yet learned how to navigate it. I'm still learning," he admitted. Draken snorted, a plume of steam escaping his nostrils. "As I suspected, the flame may have accepted him physically, but the mental connection remains undeveloped." "Then perhaps," interjected Lady Seraphina, "we should begin there. Heir Eli must commune with the ancestral memory before presenting himself to the Empire." Vaxer nodded slowly. "Agreed. The chamber of reflection will be prepared." He turned to Eli, his expression solemn. Young heir, this will not be easy. The memories of countless Drakari rulers span millennia of history. The experience can be overwhelming. Eli squared his shoulders, determination evident in his glowing eyes. I'm ready. I want to understand. The chamber of reflection lay deep within the heart of the ship, a spherical room whose walls were lined with crystals similar to those that had housed the flame. Eli stood in the center, alone save for Vaxer, who would guide him through the process. Clear your mind, the first dragon instructed. Feel the flame within you. It is not just power, it is knowledge, wisdom, the collective experience of all who came before. Let it rise to your consciousness. Eli closed his eyes, focusing inward. He could feel it, a warm presence nestled within his core, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. As he concentrated, the warmth spread, rising from his chest to his head. Suddenly, his mind exploded with images, sounds, sensations, memories not his own cascading through his consciousness like a flood breaking through a dam. He gasped, staggering under the onslaught. He saw the birth of the Drakari civilization on a world circling a red giant star. He witnessed the development of their first interstellar vessels, the establishment of colonies that would become the core worlds of their empire. He experienced the great wars with rival species, the periods of peace and prosperity that followed, the internal struggles for power. Most vividly, he felt the moments when the flame passed from one bearer to the next, the sacred ritual that had continued unbroken for thousands of years until now. When Eli finally opened his eyes, hours had passed. Vaxer remained, watching him with a mixture of concern and anticipation. I saw everything, Eli whispered, his voice hoarse. So much history, so many lives. And did you understand what you saw? Vaxer asked carefully. Eli nodded slowly. I think so. The empire wasn't always an empire. It grew from a single world, a single clan of survivors after some great catastrophe. The flame. He paused, pieces falling into place. The flame isn't just a symbol or a source of power. It's a fragment of your original home world's core, preserved somehow when the planet died. Vaxer's eyes widened with surprise. Few grasp that truth so quickly. The flame is indeed the heart of our lost home, a piece of our origin preserved through the ages. It contains not just memories, but the very essence of what makes us Drakari. But then why would it accept me? I'm not Drakari. The first dragon was quiet for a long moment before answering. Perhaps that is precisely why. The flame seeks renewal, adaptation. Our civilization has grown stagnant, set in traditions that no longer serve us. Perhaps in you, it saw the potential for change. Before Eli could respond, an alarm blared throughout the ship. Vaxer's head snapped up, his expression hardening into one of alert concern. What is it? Eli asked, already knowing it couldn't be good. We're being hailed by the Imperial Defense Fleet. There's been an attack on one of our border worlds. Vaxer's voice was grim. The Kryvex Dominion has broken the treaty. We are at war. The Kryvex. Eli sifted through his newly acquired memories, finding information about this longtime adversary of the Drakari. A militant species, insectoid in appearance, with a rigid caste system and expansionist philosophy. The treaty that had maintained peace between their empires had stood for nearly a century. They rushed to the command center, where the council had already gathered. A holographic display showed a Drakari colony world, one of its cities burning. The attack came without warning, reported the fleet commander, a battle-scarred dragon with crimson scales. Civilian casualties are high. The defense garrison was overwhelmed within hours. Why now? Demanded Lord Draken. The Kryvex have honored the boundaries for decades. Lady Seraphina's eyes narrowed. Perhaps they've learned of our succession crisis. They may believe us vulnerable during this transition. Or they've learned of my existence, Eli said quietly. All eyes turned to him. A human heir. They might see it as a sign of weakness, desperation. Vaxer nodded grimly. A logical assessment. The Kryvex would interpret such a radical departure from tradition as evidence of internal instability. We must respond with overwhelming force, Draken insisted. Show them that the Empire's strength remains undiminished. Eli stepped forward, his transformed eyes glowing more intensely as emotion rose within him. No, that's exactly what they expect, what they're prepared for. The council stared at him in surprise. Draken huffed indignantly. You presume to dictate military strategy, boy? You who knew nothing of our kind days ago. I know enough now, Eli replied calmly. The ancestral memory had given him insights no human could have possessed. The Krivex rely on predictable responses. Their tactical computers analyze historical patterns to anticipate enemy movements. But they've never faced a human before, never faced me. He approached the holographic display, studying the battle data. Their attack focused on our military installations first, then civilian centers. Standard Krivex doctrine. But look here. He pointed to a section of the planet that remained untouched. They avoided the temple complex entirely. Vaxer leaned closer, amber eyes widening with realization. The ancestral shrine. It houses artifacts from the early days of our expansion. Exactly, Eli nodded. The Krivex are pragmatic to a fault. They wouldn't spare a target unless it held value for them. I think they want something in that shrine, something worth starting a war over. A stunned silence fell over the command center. Finally, Lady Seraphina spoke. If this is true, we have an opportunity. Instead of dividing our fleet to counterattack, we could focus on discovering what they seek. And protecting it, Eli added. Or using it as bait. Lord Draken looked from Eli to Vaxer, his expression conflicted. The boy thinks like a Drakari strategist, he admitted reluctantly. No, Vaxer corrected, a note of pride in his rumbling voice. He thinks like neither Drakari nor Krivex, and that is his strength. The enemy cannot predict what they do not understand. Decision made. The Drakarath altered course, racing toward the besieged colony world. Eli spent the journey in deep communion with the ancestral memory, searching for information about the shrine and what treasures it might contain that would interest the Krivex. By the time they arrived, he had his answer and a plan. The Drakari ship emerged from hyperspace on the far side of the planet's moon, using its natural mass to shield them from immediate detection. Eli stood on the bridge, now dressed in armor specially crafted to his specifications, lightweight and flexible, accommodating his smaller human frame while providing protection and enhancing his connection to the flame. The artifact the Krivex seek is called the Nexus Key, he explained to the assembled council and military commanders. According to the ancestral memory, it's a device created during the early wars, capable of establishing instantaneous communication across vast distances, bypassing the normal limitations of hyperspace. Such technology would give them a significant tactical advantage, noted the fleet commander. Their forces could coordinate with perfect synchronicity across multiple fronts. Exactly, Eli nodded. But the key was never fully stabilized. That's why it was decommissioned and placed in a shrine. The Krivex must believe they can succeed where our ancestors failed. How do you propose we proceed? Asked Vaxer. Eli's plan was audacious. He would lead a small team to the surface, entering the shrine through ancient tunnels known only to the highest echelons of Drakari leadership, knowledge now available to him through the flame. While the main fleet engaged the Krivex forces in orbit as a distraction, Eli's team would secure the Nexus Key. It's too dangerous, protested Seraphina. You are the heir. Your safety must be our priority. No, Eli countered firmly. My duty must be the priority. The flame chose me for a reason. This is that reason. Before anyone could argue further, Eli manifested his energy wings, the blue-white light filling the bridge. The sight silenced all objections. In that moment, despite his human origin and youth, he truly looked like the heir to an ancient empire. I will go, he declared, his voice carrying an authority beyond his years. And I will succeed. Hours later, as Eli led his small team through the underground passages beneath the ancient shrine, he reflected on how completely his life had changed. A week ago, he had been a lonely boy on a rooftop, dreaming of escape. Now, he carried the legacy of an interstellar civilization on his shoulders. The tunnels opened into the shrine's lower chambers, untouched by the conflict raging above. The temple's architecture was grandiose, with soaring ceilings and walls covered in intricate reliefs depicting Drakari history. At its center stood a pedestal, and upon it, a crystalline device no larger than Eli's hand, the Nexus Key. But they weren't alone. A squad of Krivex soldiers had beaten them there, their insectoid forms moving with mechanical precision as they attempted to disable the shrine's ancient security systems. Their chitinous armor gleamed dully in the temple's light, compound eyes fixed on the prize they sought. "Hold," Eli whispered to his team. "Let me try something first." Before anyone could stop him, he stepped into the open, alone and seemingly vulnerable. The Kryvex soldiers immediately trained their weapons on him, mandibles clicking in their alien language. "I am Eli Morgan," he announced, allowing his eyes to glow with the flame's power. "Heir to the Drakari Empire. And you are trespassing." The Kryvex hesitated, clearly confused by his appearance. Eli had counted on this, their inability to process a human as a threat worth taking seriously. It gave him the moment he needed. With a surge of will, he called upon the flame's power. His energy wings burst forth, and with them came tendrils of blue-white fire that snaked across the floor toward the Kryvex soldiers. Before they could react, the energy enveloped them, not burning but paralyzing, locking their exoskeletons in place. "Now," Eli shouted, and his team rushed forward, securing the frozen invaders. He approached the Nexus key carefully. Through the ancestral memory, he understood both its potential and its flaws. With gentle hands, he lifted it from its pedestal, feeling the device hum with latent power. The Kryvex couldn't have controlled it, he told his second-in-command, a younger dragon named the Los. "The key responds to the flame. That's why it was never weaponized. Only the Emperor could use it, and doing so required their full concentration, leaving them vulnerable." The Los looked at him with newfound respect. "And now," Eli smiled, a plan forming in his mind. "Now we have an heir who can think differently. Come on, we need to get back to the ship." The battle in orbit had intensified by the time they returned. The Drakari fleet fought valiantly, but the Kryvex had numbers on their side. The Drakarath itself had taken damage, its shields flickering under concentrated fire. Eli rushed to the command center, the Nexus key clutched in his hands. Lord Vaxer turned at his entrance, relief evident in his expression. "You succeeded," the first dragon observed. "Not yet," Eli replied. "But I will." He placed the key on the central console. "I need access to our communications array. All of it." Understanding dawned in Vaxer's eyes. "You intend to use the key. Not as it was designed," Eli explained quickly, "but repurposed. The Kryvex wanted it for instant tactical communication. What if instead, we used it to broadcast on all frequencies simultaneously, directly into their command network?" Serafina, who had joined them, looked concerned. "What would you broadcast?" "The truth," Eli said simply. "About the flame, about the artifact, about me. The Kryvex attacked because they believed the Empire was weakening. I'm going to show them how wrong they are." The modifications took precious minutes, during which the battle continued to rage. Eli worked feverishly, guided by both his human intuition and the ancient knowledge of the flame. When he finally connected the Nexus key to the ship's systems, he placed his hands on it and closed his eyes. "Now," he whispered. The key activated, glowing with the same blue-white energy as Eli's wings. Throughout the Kryvex fleet, communication systems suddenly carried not their own tactical data, but an unexpected transmission. The image of a human boy with glowing eyes and wings of pure energy, speaking directly to them in their own language. "I am Eli Morgan, bearer of the eternal flame, heir to the Drakari Empire," his message began. "You believe the Empire weakened, its traditions failing. You were wrong. The flame has not dimmed, it has evolved, as all living things must." As he spoke, the energy wings on his back flared brighter, and tendrils of flame extended outward, creating a display of power that transcended the mere visual transmission. Somehow, through the combination of the key and the flame, Eli was projecting not just his image but his presence. "This conflict ends now. Withdraw your forces, honor the treaty, and we will allow you to return to your territories without further loss. Continue, and you will face not just the traditional might of the Drakari, but something new, something you cannot predict or counter." And that was a threat they knew to be true. Already, the Kryvex had witnessed their strike team's utter failure at the shrine, their forces defeated by tactics no algorithm could have anticipated. One by one, the Kryvex ships began to disengage, pulling back from the battlefield in orderly retreat. It wasn't surrender. The Kryvex culture didn't allow for that concept, but it was acknowledgement of a strategic reality. This was not a battle they could win. When the last enemy vessel had disappeared into hyperspace, a cheer erupted throughout the Dracorath. Eli released his connection to the key, suddenly exhausted. Vaxer caught him as he stumbled. "You have done what no Drakari could have done," the first dragon said quietly. "You have brought peace without destruction." "Not just peace," Seraphina added, her azure scales gleaming with reflected light from the viewport where the Drakari fleet now orbited the saved colony. "But innovation. The key, repurposed as you used it, has potential we never explored." Even Lord Draken, who had been the most skeptical of Eli's succession, inclined his head in acknowledgement. "The flame chose wisely," he admitted. "Perhaps our future requires something more than tradition alone." As the Dracorath set course for the Imperial capital, where Eli would at last be formally presented to the empire he now helped lead, he found a moment of quiet to stand alone at a viewport, gazing at the stars that had once seemed so distant from a rooftop on Earth. "I found where I belong," he whispered to himself. And for the first time, he truly believed it. The flame within him pulsed in response, warm and affirming. This was just the beginning of his journey, the first chapter in the story of how a lonely human boy became the bridge between worlds, the heir who would transform an ancient empire and bring it into a new age of prosperity and understanding. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.